Hello, welcome to Flory Models Q&A Tuesday. Here we are on the 22nd of March 2016. And before we start, first of all, two apologies. One is I feel absolutely terrible. I've obviously gone down with a very deadly strain of man flu. I'd like to thank John Buller. Obviously you've seen him on the live shows and all the rest of it. I was out to lunch with him on Sunday and he was good enough to give me this germ-ridden thing. And I've got all the symptoms he had on Sunday. So thanks for that, John. So I'm not doing this as live as in live stream. It's a live recording, if you like, using everything, but it's not up live. So if you're wondering where it is, I didn't want to risk me losing a lung live, you know, technically on the internet. Plus the fact we've got deliveries and that coming in, so it'll be a bit more flexible and everything else. But basically for the next hour, I'm going to try and keep you as entertained, go through as many questions as I possibly can with you and everything else like that. As you can see down in front of me, we are in a bit of a mess. This is one of those things with multi-engine bombers and stuff like that. You can do so many different things on the go at the same time. It's quite nice. So if we just switch cams, hopefully the new switcher box will be here soon. Down on here, you can see we've installed the resin, replacement resin top to it. It needs to be sanded and blended in. It's pretty close, and we had a couple more joins I just wanted to do a little bit more attention with, so we've done that. We've also put the, part of the exhaust stacks in and everything else, so they're coming along. This one is exactly the same now, so that is technically all ready to be fitted onto the model, which is a nice step. The main fuselage itself, to be honest, is a bit of a handful getting it all together. A lot of it is I didn't have the instrument panel totally lined up properly, so I've had to make a few adjustments, you know, and all that thing. And it is the thing, when you're joining all this lot together, it's just you run the risk of popping a seam. And I'll be honest with you, it's what we did at the front. It was going so well. I put the clamps on and the clamps put pressure and it popped the seam. So it ended up pulling it apart and it's popped it on the bottom. So we're going to have to do a little bit of a sanding job, filler job and everything else like that. But that is the thing. If you're coming in with clamps, especially pegs, because you can't vary the amount of pressure they give. If you push in the middle, the outsides pop. And then what I did, I made the fatal mistake. After we'd used extra thin to weld all this up, we've come in here and I've literally just gone down with it all with the actual, as you can see, the old surface primer, just to seam check it like we've done in previous videos, and that actually ate through the the glue and popped all the seams, so it all literally just fell apart. Sorry, you're gonna have to get used to that. I wasn't gonna do this. I was telling myself I won't do it, and then I thought, no, I've got to do it. I'm a martyr, I know. But generally down in front we've got the guns, they're all painted up. Now I've done them in the metallizer paints. What have I done with it? We did have it, here it is. So we've done this one in the dark iron, which is the 214 Mr. Metal colour. Love this stuff. Getting a bit low, I'm going to have to get some more of that in. But basically you paint it on and then you can dry brush it to give an instant weathered effect. Now I know a couple of you have mentioned about the internal colour of green that I've chosen. Obviously the REF stuff is a lot lighter. And I'll tell you one thing, this stuff, which is the Stynel Res in the green, isn't a million miles away from the REF colour. It's pretty damn close, so you could always just prime it on the inside with this and have that more correct colour. I've used standard US internal green. I think because you're doing it inside a confined area, it's 1/72nd, no one's going to worry about it. Obviously as well, it's got weathering, so we've gone in there, we've dry brushed it, it's had washes and everything else which are going to lighten and darken, and it's going to change those colours totally, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. By the time you look through this scale 2-foot glass and all that, it's going to give you the type of effect that perhaps you're looking for. If I was doing this obviously on a 1/32nd, let's face it, if I ever did one, I don't think I will, but if I was something 1/32nd, then yeah, I'd be a lot more careful, because when you look in through the windows, you're going to see all the detail in the inside and you want it to be the correct colours. But down on here, a bit like we've done the Star Wars, it's more of an effect. It's darker green, you can see the green in there and you'll see the different colours quite clearly. Yet if you were doing it, as I said, something in an environment where it's pretty dark and dingy and you can't really see, having the accurate colour isn't that important. So next up for me on this one is I'm going to try and get the wings fitted onto it. We'll get them seam checked, make sure they're all fitted absolutely perfectly. We get the tail planes on and then we're going to install all the glass onto it. Once we've got all the glass in and everything else like that, I'm probably going to PVA the windows just to take care of them for the minute, and then we'll come round and I'll actually go in and I'll take care of some of the little details afterwards by pulling those out and then re-gluing them afterwards, okay? The other thing as well, I have put this bit of glass in here. I think I've got a better way of doing it. Because it is this bubble on the side, I'm probably going to spray it all in one, and then I'm going to shave back the glass, clean it away, and then stick the clear ones on afterwards, just the bulbous bits. I think it'll fit better than having that horrible one in there, because if you wanted to, you could fill that, go over it with, you know, something like the surface primer, fill that completely, sand it in so it is totally gone. But as I said, it's a weak point in it. I imagine, to be honest, because we've pulled the nose off and everything else, we are going to have to get out the filler. We're going to have to take care of this stuff around the nose. We're probably going to need it on the wings and all the other bits and pieces. But generally, it might not look it, but actually it's quite far ahead. And I think by the time we get this all masked up with the masking set, we should be really in a good position by the end of the week to actually get this into paint. So hopefully I've got enough juice down in here. I just say, I don't know how many questions we're going to be able to get through. Still no watch, so if there's a knock at the door, I have to run off. That's where I've gone. Oh God. Right, so first question is up from Brett. He says, "Hi Phil, I have a P61, which is obviously the Black Widow. I would like to do the Black Widow scheme, the black scheme. How would you paint it to show the correct hue while the faded look and weathered? I know that it's very dark grey, but what one?" Actually, Jamie, he's done his Bronco / Armageddon Mad Max thing. Have a look at that. He's done a fantastic weathering job on that one, and it's in black. And as he points out on that one, he's used very dark blues, hues of blues as well, just to give it that effect of black. He hasn't actually used a full-on black. It's always been mixed in with blues and various accents to give it more tone variation, to give it a very nice realistic look right the way over the actual black surface. And also the thing is, the way he's done it as well works extremely well with the chipping, because the blending of the chipping and the metal through to the primers, through to warm paint, through to normal paint is almost seamless. Okay, so it naturally goes in. So when you look over his work, you'll see that it looks absolutely fantastic. And I know for a fact he's also used a lot of blues down in there, very much shades of blacks and things like that, and multiple layers of building it all up to give him the correct look right the way over. But it's well worth having a look at that one, because that is an absolute stunner and a masterclass in painting black work, because it just has that real natural beaten down look to it. And obviously the P61, it looks a mess at the best of times when you look at reference photos and everything else. So actually his work would carry across quite well to it. Normally I would say totally over-weathered and all the rest of it on a normal aircraft, but things like the Pacific Theatre, they were like that. Okay, so that you can take a cue from his different styles, different chipping techniques and things like that, and have a look at that one. But it is that thing, I must admit, I never thought of really going down the blues like as much as he's done. But he's built it up with various shades of blues to break up the black, and that's what we're saying. It's that thing in nature, get rid of black, get rid of white, it's all hues of and different things of. So basically go and have a look at his one. Joe says, God, can we keep the question short, guys? Cheers from Gaynor, North Carolina. I took your idea for the surface, about the surface primer from Tamiya, which is obviously this stuff. I keep an empty bottle of their paint and put Mr. Surfacer in instead. It works great, less mess than the big Mr. Surfacer bottles. I'm at home, can never pronounce that, recuperating from knee surgery last week, and I get to watch the live show for a change. My SU-33 egg is in work. Just wondering if I should freehand spray or master camo. I'll be using Mr. Paint for the colours that I got for doing the Kinetic SU-33. I noticed a lot of questions about Stynol Res. The best primer made. I've bought the Badger 350 external mixed airbrush for a cheap and use it exclusively for it, and it works great. Absolutely, the Stynol Res loves a bigger needle and everything else. When you're dealing in scale, you know, obviously things get a little tighter, so I would probably mask it. Do the tackworm trick, you know, of actually, I've used that bit for doing other things today, but basically it is the old thing, white tack so it's oil free, roll it into a sausage, wang it down, and away you go. So I'd start with that first colour first, which is usually that light grey colour. Put that everywhere, and then come in with the 2 shades of blue right the way over the top. You can even do it with paper masks if you wanted to. So if you take the instructions, photocopy them to the right size, overlay them, put dots of white tack around, put the paper on top, you get a slightly faded edge with it as well. Really quick, very simple. But because you're dealing in something this scale, it's just that thing about, you know, trying to make it all look nice and together. When you're in the bigger scales like the 48 stuff and everything else, then you can go in freehand because you can actually blend things together and do sort of weathering effects and various things like it. But when you're talking on that, which is what, less than 72nd scale, probably I'd go in with a mask because give it a slightly harder edge look to it. Okay, Mark Tweet says, hi Phil and team, loving the website, the channel. I've recently joined and starting to build aircraft kits after a few years of wargaming miniatures. I have 2 questions for you and the guys, both probably very basic. Don't worry, no such thing as a silly question. That should be our tagline for the forum. Okay, in what order do you typically build and paint an aircraft in? Particularly, which paint do you attach? At what point do you attach weapons, apply decals, applying weathering wash, attaching the canopy, etc.? Okay, so, you know, have a look at any one of the builds on the site or any one of my videos and you'll see roughly how I tend to do it. I usually go down the line of try and do as much as you possibly can that's not going to interfere with other stages, i.e. if you're doing something like an aircraft, we were saying, build the entire thing, okay, with the exception of things like weapons, pylons, gear, okay, and all aerials and stuff like that. But certainly the canopy will go down very early, even if it's just white tacked into position. So when you paint it, you can paint the entire thing in one, okay. The pylons and obviously the weapons fit, the gear, the doors and all the rest of it, I do afterwards because it's a pain when you're trying to do the weathering wash and things like that, or any type of sort of post-weathering onto your paintwork, because you've always got to work around pylons and if you've got weapons and various things on there, okay, so they are usually a separate fit, but they are still weathered and painted and everything else at the same time as everything else. It's just they're not attached until it's ready. So normally what I'll do is that I'll actually paint the model completely, okay, canopy is always on, even if it's just tacked into position with a little bit of white tack, just hold it in place, okay, and then I will spray the lot, okay, including weapons, pylons, everything else like that is all done, seal it down, decal everything as well, so the weapons, pylons, all the rest of it are all decaled all at the same time, okay. I'll then usually put the weapons to the pylons, okay, and glue them in place, okay, and then once it's had the weathering wash and the various other bits and pieces like that done that are going to need rubbing and banging around and all things like that, then I'll actually put them on, okay. So it's usually one of the last things to go on, and then obviously pitot tubes, aerials, wiring excuse me all things like that will go on absolutely last, okay, because obviously they're the things that you're going to break and knock off and everything else. So like gear, I'll put the gear on maybe just to stop it lying on the floor all the time, but I won't put gear doors and all the little refined bits and pieces. They will all go on last. Same goes with armour. I'll try and do as much as I can before, you know. So like when you saw the Terminator, it was almost a whole, but there's a couple of bits and pieces obviously we didn't put on, because you don't want to end up having to repaint them again once they're on and in situ. So basically it's a straightforward job, just doing everything in bigger stages. But have a look at my builds, the guys' builds, everybody else's. They all tend to do it in the same way. It's just to make things a lot easier. But certainly, like the instructions call out, never follow those, because sometimes they just have you do things completely at the wrong time that are going to make life a lot harder for you down the build. Okay, question 2. What is the best way of masking, painting and polishing canopies? Okay, so best way of masking them is obviously, the easiest way is to buy something like this. Okay, this is a masking set. They're available, they're pre-cut, you literally just stick them on. They're like Tamiya tape. Sometimes you've got to do a little bit of infill work and everything else, you can do it that way. Second way is to do the old mask oil. So actually you go around it with mask oil. So we've got a couple of flavours, which I will do a full-on test when I get around to it. It may be the end of the week. Okay, and then that way what you can do is put those down. If you're using the Sol R type, you can actually cut it, because it dries like paint. It's not rubbery, so when you cut it, it doesn't drag, okay, and everything else. So you could mask up your canopies like that. Your other option, which is my standard way, is just use normal masking tape, cut it slightly thinner and just work your way around all the edges and then infill it afterwards. Again, have a look, there's videos on masking, polishing and painting canopies as in the tutorial section as well. Okay. Or last up, you know, you've got other options where you can actually do scratch cleaning. So if you use a wooden cocktail stick with acrylics, you can just spray the canopy and then clean it up afterwards. As for polishing them and all the rest of it, personally, and I know it sounds like I'm just, you know, cop out here, but the Flory Models polishing set will do absolutely fine. So if you buy the sponge set, which is FMS 001, you'll get that one. You'll also get the blue one, and you'll get the black one, and between all three of them you can polish out the center seam. So you might want to do scrape clean it with a blade just to take the high edge off of it, and then basically blue, polish on the black side, which is one side wet and dry paper, blue side on this guy, and then white, and you'll have a mirror finish on there. Okay, it doesn't matter what it does, it tends to do absolutely everything. So that would be my high recommendation. As I say, $4.95, they'll last you forever, and it does an absolute great job. As I say, don't apologise, there's no such thing as a silly question, but I will go over it as many times as we have to. Anyway, Josh asked, when will you be building a ship again? Good point, Josh. Don't know. Haven't got any plans to do one at the moment. I'm still like getting over the shakes and everything of doing the Iwo Jima, because that was a massive build. But I would like to do another one, definitely. It won't be anything massive, so don't think I'm going to be tackling anything 1/200 scale, because that's just far too much time. But 1/350, things like that, then I could get in there and do something else. I've got a couple of gaps. I know what I'm building all year, but I have got some gaps deliberately to fill in what you guys want me to do. So later on in the year, just after the summer, the big super build, for instance, I've got a gap of like 2.5 months where I haven't got anything planned. So if there's enough guys want me to do a ship, I can do a ship in there. Okay, John asked, Phil, please remind me what you used to cut your Vallejo airbrush cleaner for everyday airbrush cleaning. Was it isopropanol alcohol or distilled water? Thanks for the great modelling advice that you and the team provide to us lesser modellers. No, we're all the same. Water. Literally, it's as simple as that. I made a bit of a thing because I thought I bought airbrush cleaner and I bought 6 bottles of airbrush thinner. Never mind, I will use it. Distilled water, if you've got some, obviously a big jug of it, use that. Because it's deionized and all the rest of it, it just flows better and everything else. And obviously it'd be nicer in your airbrush because it also hasn't got all the calciums and various deposits which can dry out and leave residue in your airbrush afterwards. But technically I do a 50-50 mix. So I will take 50% out of a brand new bottle, put it into another one of these, okay, and I'll normally mark it, so I've got 2, okay, so usually one like this, or the other one, or it's down the far end. Okay, so you can put it in like that, and then the other one is a 50-50 mix. The 50-50 mix is for doing just that, flushing it out and blowing it out and all the rest of it. And I'll use the good bottle with it neat, just for that final little bit of just making sure, because then that way it's got all the soaps and the various things that condition the seals inside, makes the Teflon seals, stops them sticking, and everything else like that. And it just conditions the inside of your airbrush. But obviously tap water has got some things, depending where you are in the world. UK ones, obviously it's got all that fluoride and calciums and everything else in that they add to it. The residue can build up inside your airbrush, so if you can get hold of distilled water, do that. If you don't worry about it, okay? But they'll basically both do the same thing. Okay, come on. Note to self, really ought to get the iPad out. This thing is useless. Come on. Right, thank you. Yes, no? Sorry. Technical difficulties. Okay, so Paul asks, hi Phil and team. For some time, companies like Tamiya, Dragon, plus some of the others always were on top of their league, with many new brands on the market in recent times. Would you say Tamiya, etc., still retain the lead? Or would there be other companies you would strongly recommend instead for 148 and 1/72? And what about Armour? Thank you so much, and warming greetings from Moscow. Well done to Russia. As I said, I've been very critical, and I must admit I got a lot of flack and I got a lot of hate and all the rest of it for when I did the review of the Mosquito. Because I've mentioned it's got a few ejector pin marks, and I think a lot of the lovers of Tamiya took it as an attack on their brand and all the rest of it. It was never ever meant to be that. You know me, I won't knock anything, okay? It was just from my point of view, with Tamiya, they've always been right there for me. They've been the top company, they've been the best in their field and everything else like that. So the bit where I'm seeing them slipping is probably annoying me a little bit, purely because I just want them to be the best. I want them to release a kit, and when they do, it's got some new innovations into it, okay? But in recent times, we've seen other companies, I'm mainly thinking of things like obviously Wingnut Wings especially, that are now getting rid of ejector pins on parts. You know, there's no problem with it. Meng is another good one as well, who managed to cast extremely small parts, extremely complicated parts, without putting an ejector pin on it, because they're all round the outside, okay? And to me, that's amazing. And you'll get some people say, yes, but it's the size of it. But if Wingnut Wings can bring out the Felixstowe wing without an injector part mark on it, and it's the size of this cutting mat, then I'm sure you can get out little bits or anything in between. So in some ways, it was more of a frustration from me by saying it's a shame. Don't get me wrong, they've still got fantastic kits. You know it's Tamiya, it's going to go together perfectly well. If it doesn't, like I found, and I made cock-ups when I was building the Mustang and things like that, that when you're going in there, something doesn't fit, and I'm prizing it in and trying to make it fit, it's because I had the wrong part, and all things like that. So there's usually a good reason. They are still there at the top of the game. I was hoping that by now they would have cured the problem of ejector pins and things like that. So when the Mosquito came along, I was a little bit let down. I was just thinking, oh, this will be fantastic. They would be there now and they'll be still at the top. Other companies now are really catching them up. And as I said, Meng is another company for armour, I think are right there now. They've just released the Abrams, which absolutely looks stunning, okay, and everything else. But I've built their Bradley, I've built various bits of armour of theirs now, and they really, really are nice. But that said, everybody is now catching up, stepping up their game. So Trumpeter and Hobby Boss, whilst there's still, you know, accuracy issues and all that aside, the quality of their production and their parts and everything else is really starting to ramp up now. Okay, so the gap, where it used to be, Tamiya, Hasegawa, and they were head and shoulders above everybody in the aircraft world. Now, not so. Everybody else is catching them up, and I was just expecting them to go on and go further and further and further and give us amazing kits. Don't get me wrong, occasionally they come out with a stunner. Their World War I tank that I did, the Tamiya one, was it the Mark IV, was absolute joy. I love the mechanical parts of it. I know the way it goes together, and generally I think it's still one of their best kits they've ever done in their lives, okay? But other companies now can quite happily produce the same type of quality when they put their mind to it. Other companies, which I think are really getting there, and they just fall short every single time. Kinetic, they are just so close to bringing out good kits, but you just know it's Kinetic, it's going to give you problems, okay? Kitty Hawk are another one. Again, great, you know, media product, their range of kits and everything else, but quite frankly, you just know it's going to have issues and problems and all the rest of it, and it's going to be have to build a kit. And I know you're going to get the guys out there now who are going to say, but we're modelers, we're into construction, it's not assembly. I totally get that, and I agree with you. It's just that in this day and age, with things like CAD, 3D scanning and all the rest of it, there's very little excuse for poorly fitting parts and stuff like that, because technically if it goes together in CAD, it should go together right. We're not talking some guy with a ruler who's measured it out and got his thumb, you know, yeah, that'll fit, and that's why it didn't go in the 70s. This is supposed to be professional, you know, sort of digital era of model making and everything else, so you'd think it would fit a lot better than it actually does. But as I said, a lot of it is a, you know, there. But if you wanted my opinion, I think obviously Kinetic and Hobby Boss, you know, they bring out great kits and everything else, but usually there's just a little bit not quite right with them. For bargains, Hobby Boss and Trumpeter are still the best ones for value for money. Revel, everybody still knocks them, but actually this kit I'm working on now is a really good kit. I've had no problem with the engine nacelles going together. We've had no fit issues anywhere at all on this. It's dropped in an absolute dream. The faults have been my own because I've messed up where I've done some alignment work. So that is coming along. And then obviously with their new things like the instructions and stuff like that, this instructions is crap, it's horrible. The new stuff is really nice. So I'm hoping now Revel's starting to ramp it up a little bit, coming up in the field and everything else. But generally you always get a little bit of movement within the companies, and it depends who's investing into it. But unfortunately it it does seem to be that the bigger companies aren't investing as much, or it doesn't seem to be from my point of view of a modeler. There's not as many kit releases. It tends to be a lot more of like reissues and, you know, just fresh decals into it and a new box art, and out it goes again at another 20% cost that it did the first time. So, but yeah, that will be my point. Sorry, rambling. Okay. Fanos, is it? I think it's so. Fanos. Hello, Phil. I have to say, love the new format. My question is, I've recently seen a number of your sanders on YouTube which are rounded. Sorry, a number of sanders which are on YouTube which are rounded. Would this be something that you would consider for your sander sponge range? Possibly, but don't forget, I don't own the company anymore. That's a separate company to me. I just advise them. To be honest, when I did these ones, everybody had rounded ones. That was the whole point. You could go out and buy any type of nail buffing sponge and all the rest of it because it's rounded and looks like a nail file. Because ours are manufactured to a specific grade and we pay that little bit more instead of having an off-the-shelf nail buffer, ours are made for us, so I wanted them like that. So they're square, I think they look neater and everything else. And don't forget, you can obviously come in and chop them if you wanted to do that type of thing with it. But that was it. It was just trying to make it a little bit more different. Or are you saying, I'm just thinking about it, do you mean round as in cylinders? If it's cylinders, it's something I spoke to the production company about. It's a UK company now. We used to have them done in China, but now it's all UK based. And when I spoke to them about it, the trouble that it is the cost involved in manufacturing a cylinder sander is a lot. Also the durability of it, because we did test it many years ago now, probably talking 5 years ago when we first did all these, and they would peel and delaminate and come apart very, very quickly, because us modelers are pretty hard on them, and that was the point to it. So, you know, that's the problem. But I can, of course, pass it on to the guys. Okay. Gary Bishop says, with a huge question, hi Phil, Steve and the rest of the gang. Sorry, it's only me today. Me and Steve will be here on Friday. A couple of questions. First, how can you tell when a kit, such as their age, such as Tamia, who has 3 or 4 F4 kits in 1/32 scale, for sale? Which one was produced first? Second question is, have your feelings changed about how well Vallejo metal colours work after seeing how well you got on with them? I went out and purchased them, but have yet to give them a go. Do you prime everything before that you have the parts? Sorry, my eyes, I'm seeing two things here. Or have you, sorry, or after you have, let me kind of make it bigger, sorry. I guess that all depends on, depends, right? At the moment, I'm doing it while parts are on the trees. And after then giving them a second coat when I put them together. Also, do you put the nuts in every bottle you have? Including metal colour. For me, I'm putting them on every bottle. Your fans want to know. Right, there's a thing about that as well. Okay, first of all, I haven't used it since using it on the MIG, and it worked a treat on the MIG. I love it. And that MIG still hasn't had a top coat, still gets handled by everybody who comes here, and it's still not worn through. So from that point of view, the stuff is hard as nails. Priming it, I think, is a must. I think it just works so much better. It's got something to cling on to, and it's got a perfect finish. So my personal choice, Tamiya X1 Gloss Black. Still think it's beautiful stuff to work with. It lays down. You don't tend to get orange peel with it and all those things you can get. And then obviously when you come in the metal coat, it just adheres to it beautifully, rock hard. And as I say, I've yet to rub through it, which in this day and age is a minor miracle, okay? As for nuts and bolts in your stuff, I must admit, and I will link these up in the forum below this when it goes up, I found a site on YouTube, sorry, eBay even. Sorry, my nose is now running. Hold on. Sorry, I do apologise. Right, so on eBay, and it's 200 M5 bolts, and I think they were like £2.50. It's 100, and I bought some M4s as well, because I thought, M4s might be one to give a whirl as well. So I must admit, I filled up a couple of tubs I've got there. This is what won't fit in my drawers of all my nuts and bolts. The big thing to remember though, guys, is just make sure they're called marine grade stainless steel nuts, okay? These are M4, these are M5. M5 I think is a little bit better. M4, it doesn't have the weight. If it sticks to the sediment in the bottom, it doesn't get out to break it around and all things like that. So that is the problem. To be honest, I'm going to be doing a little thing on paints in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to be talking about old paint and its shelf life, because I'm pretty convinced now, because I've tried to use a couple of my older colours, shall we say, in the Vallejo range. You know, I'm a fanboy, I do like the Vallejo stuff. But it's crap, because it has a shelf life, and it bunged up my airbrush every time I put any paint near it, unless I filter it. If I filter it, I'm okay, but there's so much flaky stuff in there and all the rest of it that some of those bottles now are probably 5 or 6 years old, and I'm sure it's gone off, yet they've never been opened. Or if they're open once, and that's all it takes, okay? So I'll be doing a thing about old paint and does it last and everything else in a couple of weeks. Whoa, right. Right, the other thing I've purchased 99% of all the Tamiya and Vallejo paints after watching you and how you enjoy using them and how easy they are to clean up. So far I haven't received any complaints from the better half and not been chased out of the house due to the smell. The other items that I've purchased since joining you is the Infinity CR Plus 0.2 and the 0.4 for primers. I also really enjoyed them. Anyway, thank you for your good work. Keep it up. Oh, and by the way, I do believe that the missus may have started noticing the stash since it's grown of your kit reviews. That's the trouble. You know, the thing is, the new ones have this new perfume smell in the actual Model Air range, and actually it does smell very nice. You know, I haven't had any complaints either, and I get them a lot. Okay. Mark says, that was Gary by the way, Mark says, hi Phil and team, I'm about to start work on the English Electric Lightning F1A. I want to add some details by adding some photo etch parts, but I'm looking at all the usual places, Edard, Hannants, etc. I'm drawing a blank. I can only find a few sets for the Lightning F2, also by FX. My question is, would you happen to know if it is just a rebox of the F2 with minor alterations to the kit from the F1? I'm wondering if the Edard photo etch set that I found is interchangeable between the two kits. Any ideas? Really enjoying the site. Mark. P.S. Happy birthday. Thank you. Did have a good one. Good point. I've got the F2, haven't I? Wherever it is. Oh, it's in a case now. It's over there. Yeah. That's a damn good question. Now, from an external point of view, the biggest changes between the two is obviously the tail and the guns. Okay, because one version, which I think is the one I've got over there with a rounded tail, I've got more versions of them because I've got them up there as well. Which one's that? The F6 has, is it 4 guns on the nose, where the F2 has them down below. I don't think you'd have too many problems, depending obviously what the photo etch are and what structurally they do. Obviously one's a later version than the other, so you'd obviously want to check some of your references. I don't know, any guys in the forum want to jump on this one, help yourself. I know we've got some real good lightning experts out there. I would imagine you could probably get away with it. If it's photo etch for things like the wheel wells, because obviously you get the detail sets for those, because I think we used it on that one actually, then yes, I think by all means they'll be absolutely fine. If it's for around the back end, engine, stuff like that, it's all going to be the same. It just literally, if there's any different areas where the F6 is different, or the F1 to the F2, which version you got, if it is something around those areas, it's something you have to look into. But generally, I think if it's just normal ones like wheel wells, stuff like that, they're going to be the same. Cockpit obviously would be different, because there was obviously some upgrades during the cockpit stuff. But externally, I think you'll be okay, especially if it's gear, wheel wells and stuff like that. I think they were all just the same on those. But as I said, I'm no means a lightning expert, so I wouldn't know. Okay, so Ted, hi Phil, love the work you do and your dedication to the hobby. Totally today, I'm sweating now, I've got the sweat, heating's off and I was freezing earlier. Love your work and all you do, dedication to the hobby. My question is in regarding to the airbrush holder on your bench in front of you, with the regulated air manifold. Before I saw your bench, I was considering purchasing the very same one for my own spray booth setup. It appears you are using a static holder, which makes me wonder if it does not function as advertised. Would you recommend this product? Right, not quite sure what you're getting at. Over here we have them. This is just one of those ones that normally clamps to the desk, but the thing is, because I need to get in my cupboards and open the doors, I've got it clamped to the top of my Airbrush, which is a problem because I've got my camera up here, we've got a light up here, and they just sort of fit in. Okay, but I do have two in there, but also I do have your standard, let me get that out of the way. I have the standard one as well, which is in a pot. My only drawback is, if you're using the 2-pin prong cap, no problem at all. But if you are using the, it's the distance guide, to be honest. If I just change cameras, we've got these guys down on here, okay, with the distance guide on it here. If you notice, it doesn't actually fit in the hole. So what I have to do is go across it and lean it on the side and have it like that instead. Okay, so it is a bit of a a drawback on that one. Okay, if you mean this one over here, which I think you do because this is the one with the air thing on there, I'll be honest with you, it's cheap and nasty, and the manifold exploded whilst we were doing an airbrush course, because I used to run everybody's airbrush off of one, and it leaked. We had oil flying everywhere from it and all the rest of it, because it should be oil free in theory, it's not. And also the plastic holders, you only get certain ones for certain shapes. So you might notice there's one over there is on its side. That's because they've got all different fittings. And I just want the standard one where it just slots in the hole just like this. Okay. To be honest, that one there is more for show than practical use, because I don't use the manifold because it leaks now. So what I do have is 3 air lines. I've got the compressor down below. The big one has 2 lines coming off of it anywhere. And then the older one down there, the 610, because I've got the 620 and the 610. 610 has 1 coming off of it, so that gives me my 3. So down in here, I have 1 air line, which is here. We have another one, which is here. And then we have another one, which is here. So between all 3, they've all got Mac valves on the end, and that's how I do it. Okay, so just in case we ever need air, we're pretty well covered with all 3. Okay, so Mike says, we still on? Yep. As are now showing the forum pages on the live show, I'm wondering if you consider changing the forum builds page. I imagine many modelers like me tend to specialise in a certain era or types. In my case, it's World War I aircraft. Most forums, including Flory model site, tend to group types on one page. For example, aircraft pages as all aircraft shown, regardless of the type. Would it be possible, for example, to have a subsection, for example, military or civilian, pre-World War I, between eras World War II to present day? In this way, you can go straight to the pages of most interest, whilst I'd still be able to visit other areas if they wish. Keep up the great, very professional. Right, sorry, nose is off. John Bolling is dead. Right, okay. I hate the way the forum grows. Okay, now when I say I hate the way the forum grows, I don't hate obviously all your work and all the bits in there, but I'm one of these guys who hates scrolling, so I've tried to keep it as small and concise as possible. Now, the boys have got involved now, so I've got Steve and Hans adding to it all the time, quite correctly in certain areas. Because obviously things like paint and things like that, they need the areas because there's so many different types and varieties and everything else. My worry for you would be that by having your own section, like, you know, say World War I, is that for modelers who really aren't into it, they'll never go near it. Okay, and because it is as you've pointed out, a smaller minority, you'll be sort of left behind by people not looking at it. Obviously, I'd still look at it, and I would look at you on every Friday when we do the galleries and everything else. But from the point of view of your general members on the site, they probably aren't going to go near it. Okay, so you'll be overlooked, and I would hate that to happen. Now, if you're part of the gallery that's in there or the work in progress, people are more likely to click on it because you're in the list of everything in there. So if they're going through and they're saying, okay, click on this one, we're going to have a look at how this one's going on, click on this one, you're probably going to get the traffic. But I think if you're on your own, you're going to be alienated, and that's the last thing I want. I like it where we've got standard groups with us all in. Because that way everybody sees it, okay, and that way you can't be overlooked and you can't be missed and everything else. But it would worry me that you're not, okay, and that is the point. Because as I say, World War I aircraft, I love them. I think they're very nice. The level of detail into them, all the different effects you can do with them, it deserves to be seen. And I'd hate for you to get pushed out and become a minority in the site because we don't have those. You know, each section is, to start with, I think we just had like armour. And then we had, like, you know, aircraft, we had naval, and then I think we had everything else. That's all we had before. Now we've broken it down a bit, so we got them into different sections and all the different bits and pieces because there's more of us in here who are all into that type of thing. And as it grows, it would. And obviously, if you had 500 members and you're all building World War One, then yes, obviously you'd have your own section. But because it's quite a small one, I wouldn't want to risk you losing out and not being seen by everybody else, because as I say, it's a good thing. I think it should be seen and it's inspirational, and that's the whole point to the work in progresses and everything else. It gives people the confidence or the idea even to go off and try something a little bit different, and that's why I do all this weird and wacky stuff occasionally. I know, you know, like Halifax, it's been seen by 4,000 people who have watched part one of that particular build. The airliner has only been seen by 800. That's the difference, okay? Is because the airliner isn't mainstream, there's not many people really into it, but everyone loves World War One and World War Two bombers and stuff like that, okay? So that is the thing to it. It's just trying to keep everything in and to do new things. But at the end of the day, you get that core thing where everybody will look at, and not everybody will go off and look at airliners. The truck, the bike builds, things like that, they had like 1,000 views out of a 4,000 membership, versus other stuff, I know almost everybody will watch it. Okay, so that would be my point. I just don't want you to be left out. Right, Hans has answered that as well. So we'll leave that as is. And so has Johan. Jeff, I agree with Johan. Hold on, we need to... Mike, I have to say, I'd like to find interesting. Yeah, sorry, we're all talking about that one thing. Okay, Colin Atkins says, hi Phil, my question is, my Evo 2-in-1 won't spray paint or anything for that matter. Sorry, but this is a bit long. Crikey, you're not kidding. Okay, guys, if we can try and concise this, because as I say, I'm sweating horrendously here. Okay, I'm going to try and do this best as I can. My Evo is spraying at an angle, and I saw that the nozzle may have been damaged. I duly purchased a new 0.2 needle and nozzle, and also bought 3 new Teflon seals. I gave the airbrush a thoroughly good clean and installed the items as they arrived. I have an older Evo with just 1 Teflon seal inside. Tried it out and it worked well. Did some spraying and cleaning, as you do between colour changes. All was going well. After a couple of days of spraying, I decided to give the nozzle a quick clean. I have one of those scrapers, which I take it you mean one of these guys, which is the needle lethal looking thing, which are quite handy for getting in those nozzles. I have one of those scrapers as well. You do with the long thin brush and dipped it into thinners, give it a twirl around inside the nozzle, doing this until the brush is clean. Putting the airbrush back together and then put a little bit of thinners in the colour cut, pulled the trigger and nothing comes out except air. Pulling it apart again, cleaned everything again, checked the nozzle, it was clean, put it together, pulled the trigger, nothing but air. Pulled it apart, soaked the nozzle and the end cap, and the body in some airbrush cleaner for a couple of days. Ran that long cleaning rod through the body, washed out the nozzle and the end cap, put it all back together, same result. Is there a... Sorry, this is live. Sorry guys, you can tell this is live. And that is something from very.com. Actually, there's two things in there. I don't know what the other thing is. We'll look at that at the end of the show if I remember, because if it's, well, I know what it is, and I'm quite excited about it. Okay, pulled it all apart, pulled the trigger, same thing again. I've also tried using thin paints, 50-50. There is no problem with the air supply. Works perfectly. I've also used a cleaning nozzle and the same without any problem. Please help, I'm almost ready to fix the Evo with a big hammer. Sorry about the length. I had to emphasise that Airbrush is as clean as the day I first got it. Keep up the good work. Right, okay, could be a couple of things. First of all, are you using, I know it sounds really stupid, but trust me, I've done it. Are you actually using a cap on top of your airbrush? Okay, if you are, make sure the centre hole, I'm terrible because I think I've lost mine already, the centre hole in it is clear. And when I say clear, I mean there's no paint bunged up the hole, because otherwise you'll cause a vacuum, and when you go for paint, nothing happens. Sounds stupid, but I've done it. It's happened to me. Second thing as well, is take the nozzle off and make sure you can see daylight through it. It only takes the tiniest of something in there, like a skin of a bit of a paint or something else, to block it up, all right? Because, yeah, we're talking microns down in there. There's not a lot of room going down on the end here, okay? So just have a look and see what you've actually got going on down there. If the answer to both of those is it's totally clear, then try part 3, which is, if I just move this a bit, what we'll do, just whip your needle out the back. He says, can't whip his needle out the back, okay? Take your nozzle off. Okay, so you want to make sure, I know you're not going to see it, but I can see daylight through mine, so that's always a good sign. Amazing sign, really. But also make sure your airflow cap, the nozzle on the end, okay, you'll find there's a little tiny hole here, and I know I can't zoom the camera in, I need to sort out the cameras, we need a new camera up there. But if you take a toothpick, okay, or something wooden, just give it a bit of a push and a roll. Now don't use anything metal, because you don't want to make this hole any bigger than it actually is, okay? But just make sure that you can actually put that in there, all right? Because if the air isn't coming through this correctly, it won't be dragging it off the needle, okay? And then what you want to do is just make sure you're all cleaning that end. I'm sure you are, because you said you soaked it all. Right, excuse me. Okay, pop this back in. Pop your dirty needle back in, okay? And when you pop it in, don't over push it, obviously, because we don't want any nasties, okay? And then the back in, and you want to check it, okay? Now the big thing is, I've seen people with amazingly clean airbrushes, all right, and I mean really clean airbrushes, still have a tiny little bit of dirt in there that causes massive amounts of problem. And it's something we're going to be talking about, say, in a couple of weeks when I'm going to do a thing on paint, okay? Because old paints especially, and we are talking like my Vallejo range, you can see over there, some of those are 5 years old, and when you shake them up, it's terrible. Because I did a bit of a test the other day, because my airbrush kept jamming up all the time. I get 2 seconds of paint and it would stop. I filtered the paint and it is horrible. It's like gel in there. It's yuck. Okay, brand new bottle out of my cupboard, fine, no problem at all. But that first stage stuff, it really didn't like it. That would be my thing. Also, you say you've got an Evo, don't forget all the parts are interchangeable. The body itself is the only thing that's different, okay? So try the nozzle, the needle, the set, and all the other bits and pieces in your other airbrush, just to have a look, and then interchange between the two. Keep a record of what's what, because if you are running separate systems like a 0.4 or a 0.2, you obviously don't want to get your nozzles and needles all mixed up and everything else like that. But try it with the other one with the bits in it, and in that way you might be able to identify there's a problem in it. But trust me, the colour cut one, I know it sounds stupid, but I've done it. I've been there like, what is wrong with this now? I've got no paint and nothing's coming out, and then all of a sudden I'm like, ah, take the cup off and it works. Put the cup on, nothing. And it's like, it's because it's drawing a vacuum and the paint can't physically flow through, okay? So that is the point to it. But generally, make sure you can see daylight through that nozzle. If you can't see daylight in there, then it isn't clean, okay? And have a good look in there. It's not going to be seals, it can't do anything. There's only a thing where the paint comes down, drops down onto the needle, and then it's going to run forward because there's a vacuum at the front end of the airbrush, and that is what's pulling it out, okay? That's what it's doing. There's no magical system or a pump or anything in there. It's a vacuum down here in the front of the airbrush is being drawn because the air is being pulled that way, and that's why your paint goes down and gets pulled out. If the paint's got no vacuum, it's not going to flow and it will just sit there, okay? So you want to make sure. The other thing as well, which I know I'm sure you have, and say it sounds really patronizing, this type of stuff, but honestly I'm not trying to be. But you want to just make sure, like mine is a classic example of being dirty down in there, but there's a slot down on that far side, okay? Just make sure that down in there is relatively clean, okay? And it is that thing, if I just disassemble mine totally, take your needle, okay, the blunt end, and shove it up the bum, okay? Just shove it right through, okay? And you should, when you do it, feel quite a bit of resistance, okay? But that is the seals, not the end. If you come in from the front backwards, you should have no resistance whatsoever, and in fact it should rattle around and be quite big, okay, down in there and everything else. But you know, mine's a classic. Oh, I'm filthy, I'm dirty in here, it needs to go clean out myself. All right, but yeah, make sure it's all clean down in this area. As I say, I wouldn't go for this thing about soaking the... God, we're running out of battery. That would be our cue to finish today. I wouldn't worry about actually soaking the entire body in it, because obviously you don't want those swelling up and everything else, and obviously make sure you've got the Mac valve off and all the rest of it if you're going to soak the body, okay? But you've got air, so we know it's not that, so it's just that process of elimination. So technically it's got to be here. It is literally the nozzle or the nozzle cap, so make sure the nozzle cap's got a gap around it so that air can get out and around it and make a vacuum, and make sure that the nozzle is clear. After you've done both those things, I'm stumped, send it to me and I'll go through it. I'm quite happy to do that. If anybody wants to send me an airbrush, as long as you cover your postage there and back, I'll have a look for you and go through it like that. Right, I think we can probably just get through a couple more and then we'll call it quits, because my paracetamol's running off. Okay, Paul Hart. Hi Phil, how about a tutorial or a revamp about older models? Over the years, techniques have improved, many thanks to your site, but I have found a few models built when I started off and thought it would be nice if you could strip off the paints, decals maybe, Buster, and alter them in a way and do a repaint and decal them and bring them up to a better standard. Many thanks, love the new format. It's a nice idea, and to be honest, I got halfway there with Buster, because poor Buster, originally, back in the, what would that have been, about 5 years ago now, Buster was a very nice model. You know, I know it's hard to believe. Actually weighs a ton these days, all the crap on him. But I stripped it back. That was the whole point of this with IPA. Gave him an IPA bath, peeled it back to literally plastic and filler. That was it. The whole idea then was to repaint it, redecal it, and take care of any little problems we might have. So he used to be, if you watch the video, he is a video build by the way. He had a separate tail, so we rejoined the tail system to it. We filled and rescribed and did all the details on that. Okay, and then obviously we just worked our way through it again, but it never got that far because I needed something to test a lot of stuff on. So you know, he's had lots of tests with absolutely everything, and he's now looking a lot more worse for wear than he ever used to. But it is an idea, and I have got some older kits, shall we say, that could probably have a birthday. In fact, I'm on about retiring a lot from my display cabinets because I don't do commissions anymore. They are full up and I've got nowhere to put anything. So, you know, never say never. Something can come back and get ripped apart. I do want to tackle an older kit at some point, something before the end of the year. Maybe not something huge. It might even be something quite small, like a 72nd scale something. But actually rescribe it, re-rivet it, and show that, you know, you can do great things with old kits and bring them back to life. So that would probably be what you're talking about as well. As for ripping the hell out of something and starting afresh with it, yes, you could do that. You could even, you know, just get the decals off, sand it and repaint it, very much like the real aircraft. So there is different things we can do, but I am going to do a old kit, you know, and it's going to be something along the lines title of teaching an old dog new tricks, because we're going to update something with raised panel lines, raised riveting, and go all recessed and bring it all nice, so with upgrades and various bits and pieces. So something I'd like to do. Okay, that was Paul. Okay, last one for today. Dave, he says, as always, a great site and great job on your video builds. I learn something new every time. Question on seam lines. After you're watching your MiG-21 video build, you indicated that no filler was needed on the fuselage seam line join. Just a quick sand over to remove the step. As an average modeler who struggles with seam lines removal, I naturally think some sort of filler is needed, whether it be putty, CA glue, liquid cement mixed with styrene on every seam. never occurred to me that that it could be perfect. I know the answer is probably obvious, and I apologise if it's a dumb question, but can you explain to your trained eye is looking when you determine that it needs no filler? No such thing as silly questions and all the rest of it. There's no such thing as a dumb thing. Keep them coming. Okay, pretty simple with me. If it is a step, okay, when we're saying a step, all right, if we just, I don't think we'll see it on this one, but I'll probably show you better on the vertical. Sorry, were we on the other camera all that time? Sorry, I think we was on the wrong camera. Okay, if it's a step, okay, i.e. the kit is more like this. Okay, so perhaps you've got, this is two fuselage halves and it's stepped up, okay, but there's no gap, it's just a height difference. I will sand this one down so it's the same, okay, and I will just take the height out of it. That way it needs no filler because there is no gap. I will only use it if there's a gap. So if you've got a bit of something going on like this, okay, so perhaps you're looking at it and there you are, you've got a bit of a gap, okay, down in here. This void section here, this triangle, is going to need filler because you can't sand down the entire height because you're going to lose all the detail, and possibly you could even go right the way through the joint, okay, because of the thickness of the plastic. So if there's a dip, I'll do it, but if it is literally like a step, okay, like that, I will sand this down the height of it until it's there and it'll be absolutely fine. Okay, then I'll put in any more details and anything else is needed. And you do get a lot of steps. For instance, down on here, we've got a step running on the bottom, okay? I've given it a little bit of primer right the way over the top. This is just surface primer. This is just to look at it and see how well it is, okay? The other one is up here on the top. There's actually a small gap between the two, so that is going to need it. But you might see it on this guy just down on here. If we catch it in the light, I need to rig up the other cameras, the close-up ones as well. But you've actually got a step. Down here, there's a tiniest little step. In the midsection, there's nothing at all. Okay, but that is it. So that will get a sand. That's had filler. So that's just literally had a brush over of the actual surface primer. This here may need a little bit of super glue, a little bit of filler and everything else just to take care of it. All right, so that is literally it. But down here you can probably see it, you catch it in the light, there is a step rather than a gap. So that's the way I would look at it. See it more of, if it's got a gap, then you know it needs filler. If it hasn't got a gap, then obviously you can sand it flush and all the rest of it. But I find obviously with, as soon as you go down the route of fillers, you've got time and obviously shrinkage and all those different bits and pieces going with it. Again, if the gap is big enough, then I might think plasticard. Okay, that's use actually sheet styrene, wedge that in the hole and then do it. So if you've got a perfect gap, but you can wedge something down in there, like some plasticard, even if you've got the really thin stuff, like 0.03 sheets, laminate them together, slide them in the hole, cut it, saves a lot of time, and that way you can just sand it. So you don't technically need even filler going into that one. Right, we'll call it right there. So that gets us down to Martin. As I say, next week, sorry, on Saturday we were going to do our live thing, but to be honest with you, I forgot all about it. I'm actually booked with Snap, with the charity. I'm out with them Saturday morning, taking the kids and everything to the races. And to be honest, I forgot all about it. So that was completely my fault. So what we're going to do is me and Steve are going to do Friday, which we're not sure what time of day it'll be yet, because obviously on Friday we've got a little bit more options. So we might even do it in the afternoon. Okay, so Friday afternoon we'll probably do it that way. The American lot will be up, and who are we going to be not getting then? I don't know, some time zone in the world, somebody will be asleep, but for a couple of hours and do it that way. All right, so then that way everyone still gets it, but obviously it's Easter, it's Good Friday, so it's a bank holiday here in the UK, so nobody will be working anyway, and everything else like that. And I know now everyone's going to say, I'll be working, Phil, I'll be working. Sorry guys. This from very.com, this is where you can all run out and buy one now, was 100 quid off. So, oh look, you get free Mr. Kipling slices. Do you think so with the money this cost? This is, if you haven't guessed it yet, if I can get into it, secure packaging, should be my replacement Can you guess what it is yet? We will give you a clue. Got red arrows on it. Okay, just change angles. Move a little bit of this out of the way. So, this is my new Citizen. Hold on. We have a security tag thing. Let's do with a knife. If you cut this, you can't send it back, probably. This is my smaller one. My other one, the Blue Angels one, this pot was twice as high. But this is, as you can see, the Royal Air Force Red Arrows. That's what my old one should have done. As you can see, it's winding itself all up now. It's radio controlled for the time and everything, so it's winding away because it's setting itself up. But this is my new titanium Red Arrows watch. Okay, so if we take some of this off, and it should have down on the back, if we open this up, you can see it's got the Red Arrows crest. It feels lighter than my old one. Make sure it is the titanium one. Does it say titanium on it? Usually does. Yeah, titanium, that's alright. Okay, but there we go. The clock is still winding itself around, but this one is digital, and you've got all your functions and your displays, and you've got your bezels on the outside and all the rest of it. So, not that I think it'll fit on my wrist without having to have it adjusted, but in theory, we are, yeah, I have to have it changed, but we are back to normal. So instead of blue, where's my old one? Here's my old one. We are now red. So there we go. Live unboxing, a live delivery and everything. I've got such girly wrists, and I have to have that taken right in. Right, there we go. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'll get that adjusted. Get my tools out. Give it a whack. Okay, and everything else. Sorry, haven't managed to get around to everybody's questions. Tried to do as much as we can and everything else, but to be honest, I am feeling it. I am sweating here on my nose, and you know guys aren't going to watch me snotting my guts up and losing a lung and everything else. All right, so there we go. That's it. I'll be back with you tomorrow for a normal video log and update and all the rest of it. And as I say, on Friday at some point during the day, keep an eye on the forum because we haven't actually agreed a time yet. I said to Steve, any day, any time you like, on Friday we'll do it. And we're going to do the live build. 2 hours, me and Steve are going to build something. Not all in one, obviously it'll be over several weeks, but we are going to be doing the, which I have to get it all down in a minute, the Dolphin, 1/35 scale Dolphin. Steve's got the paint, he's sending me down the right colour paint and all the rest of it, and we're going to carry on with that. I'm going to carry on, hopefully this afternoon, with the rest of the Halifax. We get that one done, get it together and everything else, will be absolutely fantastic. Tomorrow I'm going to start on the paintwork for the Dreamliner, so we're going to get that one masked up, hopefully get it into paint, and go through the motions on that one as well. So there we go. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Take care, happy modelling, and I'll catch you all next week.